how did GitHub get turned around? I mean, I love the question and I love the intent of the question, though I want to set the record straight. GitHub was doing well from a product perspective when I joined, no matter what. Revenue-wise, it was in the mid 100s total from a direct and from a credit card and an enterprise sales perspective. We were getting something like 10,000 users signed up a day. We were trending towards like 70 million repos, and it was a great product. The entire open source community was using this, but it did have struggles, and we all know famously what GitHub struggles were, and they were in the media from 2014 on. But even so, like the most famous thing that happened to GitHub from a product perspective was it got that letter, Dear GitHub, from the open source community, which basically said, hey, GitHub, you're not paying attention to us. You're not listening to our needs, and you're not being responsive. You're not actually building something that we want to go use. And we got to have a real frank conversation about this. And at some point that lit a fire inside of GitHub around late 2015 or 2016. I can't remember the exact date, but something like that. But even that started to wane a little bit. And what happened in reality is GitHub crossed a chasm in terms of it was no longer this really kind of hip, cool, niche startup. It had to actually understand how to build a really big business. And it wasn't about turning it around. It was about getting it to become a real big business. So let's talk about what we did to do this. And it's not complicated. It's the same thing you would do in any company that has a good fit with a core set of customers. Is you talk to those customers on a regular basis and you build things that they want. You yourself as a company or as a leadership team have to have a pretty big, bold vision and a strategy to execute and a sequence for that product to come to market. It's got to be unique. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be compelling. You got to be right, essentially, in what you want to go build. And you've got to be responsive in such a way that people feel that you're listening to them. So let's talk about some of the things that we did. Well, the first thing we did is we talked about that big, compelling vision, and you could kind of see it playing out. We had GitHub Actions now, packages, security, advanced security, Copilot, code spaces, the new search beta. It's all coming together. It's the world's largest software development platform, end to end, infused with AI elements. And it doesn't look like a specific niche. It looks like all of them together, and it has an opinion across it. But if you don't like that opinion, you could go use other things. It is the standard in almost every single one of those categories now at this point. What's the other thing that we did? Well, we didn't only focus on the big, shiny, brand new things. We put together a team that we called the Paper Cuts team. They went, and their entire purpose in life was to go fix small things around GitHub. And they were empowered to go into almost any corner and crevice of the GitHub product and go fix something. They can listen to any customer, they can go see this, and they can just go do it. And the point of it was to build momentum and to show the organization, GitHub itself, that it can decalcify and release on a regular basis, but also the world that we were releasing stuff on a regular basis. And all of these things happened pre-acquisition by Microsoft. Post-acquisition from Microsoft, we were infused with massive amounts of capital and access to people, and then we can really go nuts on a whole bunch of deep endeavors that we wanted to go do. So as an example, one of the first things that we did before the acquisition by Microsoft was we released GitHub Actions V1. It was mostly a workflow tool, had light elements of CI. Post-acquisition from Microsoft, we now had a massive amount of capital. We can actually build a real CI system because CI is actually a loss-leading product. It's very difficult to go build CI if you don't have massive amount of capital. So the idea being here that once we got acquired by Microsoft, we were able to accelerate some very deep, specific things. Combine all those together, which is you have a big, bold vision, you're showing progress on the daily, and you're making consistent, steady progress while showing it along the way on the big vision. Combine that together, you're going to have success. Now, how can you fail in that scenario? Well, if you're wrong on your vision, you're eventually going to fail. It's a simple thing. But if you're right on your vision, it doesn't really matter. You just consistently every day show up and go continue to do that. So how did GitHub get turned around? Well, turning around is a wrong story. How did GitHub get to the point where it's considered the most important software company in the world in all likelihood? Well, it was getting back to understanding what we were supposed to build in the world, who we're supposed to build it for, and show progress if we can every single day, at minimum every single week, and then really at certain points in the year show massive, massive, massive visionary improvements that no one else in the industry was ever going to go do. Combine all that together and it looks different. So one of the things that's also important that we should touch upon when you're talking about any sort of organization that's going to quote unquote be turned around or actually grow are people. And one of the focuses after I joined was to go and recruit some of the best in the industry or raise from internal some of the folks that have been doing a lot of heavy lifting. And that was one of the things that we don't talk enough about in the industry. We might talk about people like myself or people like Nat Friedman who came in from Microsoft as a CEO, but we don't talk enough about the people internal to organizations that had massive impacts. As an example, I've mentioned before in other ways, Max Schoening was someone I hired from Google to run product design. He was influential on GitHub Actions. Sam Lambert, who now runs PlanetScale as a CEO, was the head of infrastructure. He was so monumentally important for keeping GitHub's lights on and advancing a bunch of the product lines at the same time. And then Copilot would not be what it is, even though it was incubated out of the office of the CTO, it was incubated by this guy named Ugo Demore, who was acquired into Google via the Semel acquisition. And so we don't do enough talking about people, but if you really want to think about how you can make and break organizations, it's who you hire in, how you retain the people you have inside, and how you embolden and let those people go and build things.